Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Audio Hour number 44? Yeah, it's 44, isn't it?
44.
44. It's our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. And hey, I want to start with Vince, who's having some slight technical difficulties. He comes in and out, so apologies to people viewing if his feed seems a little digitized. But anyway, so Vince, how's it holding up?
It's not bad right now. I hope it doesn't die. Maybe it's because it is episode 44, which some people might say would be the episode of death, because the number 4 is death in various Asian languages. Yeah, maybe that's the reason. Hopefully my feed doesn't totally cut out, and hopefully I'm somewhat comprehensible during this hour.
Well, if it comes back, if you go out, jump back in, or type to us, and we can. I'll keep the chat window open that we have behind the scenes so that we can know what you're saying. If it goes digital, then I'll give you warnings. But Alex isn't digital.
All right, awesome.
What's up, Alex?
I'm not digital, and I have a nice, new, fresh, recharged row of analog mandarins behind me, as you can see. As my wife laid them out on the table, she was saying, "This is going to make Kyle happy."
You should paint little 8-bit hearts on them, and as you keep one, you go up.
Yeah, if only I could just sort of give them to you, because they're very tasty.
Don't throw mandolins.
8-bit hearts.
Don't throw mandarins at this.
That'd be pretty cool. I was thinking Dragon Balls. I'd love to see them as Dragon Balls.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, just paint some orange stars, red stars on them,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. How many Dragon Balls were there? Were there 7?
7, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I hadn't. Gee, Dragon Ball. That takes me back. Anyway, I'm well. What?
I called you all nerds.
Oh, I thought you said Kamehameha.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, Vince would get that. See, Vince gets
Oh,
it.
man.
Vince is still laughing. All right, guys. So the topic, we had a couple of topic ideas, but they were kind of weak, to tell you the truth. And iCompose came through and said, hey, why don't you guys discuss how much you rely on music theory versus inspiration? We thought we'd start there and move into some other topic afterwards if we have time.
That is a really, really, really interesting question. I've never sort of thought about. I'd never really made a differentiation between, music theory versus inspiration. To me, they sort of go together. But when you actually think about, trying to splitting them apart and then working out how much you utilize each of them in the songwriting process, that's very, very interesting. So let's get into it.
So
Vince.
go, Alex.
No, go Vince.
Go me?
So we were saying that Vince.
All right, okay.
For those who don't know, the Diamante, he doesn't require either of those, music inspiration or music theory. He just sort of sits down and it just sort of flows out into the world.
He oozes minor thirds.
I thought it was tritones.
Oh, no.
Either one.
Oh, man.
Bit crushed
Those are pretty great,
tritones.
though. I could just be crunching on diminished sevenths all day. You know, just give me diminished sevenths and the piano, and I'll be riffing for hours. But seriously, that differentiation between starting with music theory versus because so often I find that I have to work and I'm not necessarily inspired, but I have some sort of start from. And that's why it's often good to, not just, if you're starting on a video game project, you actually write down some notes or even go with a full-fledged document that talks about what are the things that are going to be representing different things in your video game. Artists might look at different color palettes, record particular visual motifs that they want to use throughout the game. Game designers will look at mechanics and particular architectural tropes they might want to use for level designs. For music, you could do the exact same thing. Here is a particular leitmotif, or a particular melody, or a particular head that is going to be used throughout pieces, even if it's not, or that head kept in mind, even if it's not going to be the theme for a particular piece. So it's great when I have inspiration. Oh yeah, this is absolutely going to be the song for the hero or for the enemy. But if I don't have that, I have some notes about, oh, this is the leitmotif, which I think will be really good for whenever I do anything that has to do with the hero. Is the hero really involved in this part of the game, or is the hero sort of this secondary element to what this piece of music is really about, like the environment? Okay, well, even if I'm not particularly inspired, I know that the hero and that leitmotif that represents the hero, yeah, let's bring him in, maybe not at the beginning, but maybe somewhere 30 seconds, 40 seconds down the line, and let me think about good harmonic progression that I can use before bringing the hero into this piece. Okay, let's write some things down. I got some ideas. Let's do something like, going from a major 1 to a major 3, sure, and doodle around with that. And okay, I'm not inspired, but I'm just doing these things, and it seems to make sense. And after a while, you might find that there's a decent piece in there that comes without having any really great inspiration there. I had a little delivery there. Maybe there's some inspiration in that package. But yeah, it's really nice to be able to help yourself, because inspiration very rarely hits 100% of the time. So writing notes to yourself and allowing yourself the ability to work with music structures and tropes that you figure out for what the game is about, that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you do the same thing, Alex?
Well, unfortunately, for me, because of my background and because of the way that I like to work, unfortunately for me, it's pretty much, I'd say, 95% music theory. And this is a real shortcoming that I have, that I often wish that it was easier for me to just sort of, throw away the structure and the rigidity of this music theory and just sort of throw together some sounds and just see where it takes me, that kind of spontaneous approach. That's one thing that I'm really not very good at. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's quite difficult. Just the background that I have, the kind of music that I started off liking most, and then the process that I actually follow to create music that I still do today, just sort of tends to always lead me down about 95% relying on music theory, not on just sort of spontaneous inspiration. So if anybody has any advice for how to be more spontaneous and more inspired, then I'm all ears, because it's one thing that I'm trying to work on.
I use instruments as my inspiration. So what was the question? It's theory versus inspiration, right? So in my case, it depends on the instrument I'm writing on. If I'm writing on a piano, keyboard type instrument, I use theory more than inspiration, because I don't know how to play piano very well, so I have to kind of think where I should go next. But if I'm writing on guitar, then I'm more inspiration based, because my hand just goes to the next, kind of common place that I would go from that kind of structure, that progression I'm working in. My brain and my hand just go, well, here's where you're going to go. I don't really know it's the third that I'm moving up to or something, but it might be because it's a common thing.
That's a fantastic point, actually. I'm actually kind of the same, because my main instrument is bass, and bass is not a fantastically useful instrument when it comes to music production. So perhaps I'm the same, but when I sit down at a keyboard, like I have a keyboard in front of me here, and if I sit down here, the first thing that comes to mind is music theory, just because I can't just riff off on a piano, because I don't play piano very well. Whereas Vince, of course,
Maestro.
Vince, the virtuoso. Also, people like Mike Shapiro, and does Matt Piersall play piano?
I don't know. He plays like everything.
Okay, well, I guess if you play the instrument that is mainly useful, that you used for actual production, then I suppose being able to rely more on spontaneous inspiration is much easier than if you don't play it. If you're Like if your instrument is something that is not immediately useful for music production, such as, like a bass guitar or a triangle, or
I love how when I'm playing on a guitar-like neck, whether it's bass or whether it's I shouldn't say guitar-like, when I'm playing on like a two-dimensional space, like a guitar-like neck or a violin neck or something. We learn the patterns to be within, and it kind of makes it easy to riff. But also, I find that it's very limiting in my writing. I can listen to a song and know whether that person is a pianist who wrote it or a guitarist who wrote it, because a song that's written by a pianist seems to have more dynamics and more breadth. But typically, other than classical guitarists, songs that are written by guitarists are kind of tight in their structure, and they stay within a form that's really kind of close together, I've noticed. And so I'll purposely go write something on the piano if I'm trying to try to kind of get the classical muse. I'll get on the piano and try to do something. I don't have any capabilities to do any fancy classical riffs, but just by being on the piano, I've kind of broadened the tonality of this piece. But when I'm on a guitar, I'm kind of in the middle of the neck, and I'll go up to the 12th fret to do some other things. I'll come back to the middle of the neck, and it always sounds the same for me. And really, I find that it's the articulations I have to change to keep songs that I wrote on guitar from sounding the same over and over and over. I have to use different strumming styles, or I have to comp in different places so that I can not make it sound like the last song, especially if I'm writing something on the acoustic. It just lends itself so much to the style of its sound. Whereas a piano can be, your imagination kind of allows a piano, even though it sounds like a piano, to understand that this could be violins over here and cellos over there. Well, it would be violins over there and cellos. Oh, I'm doing it backwards because I'm backwards on the screen, so I did it right. So it'd be violins over here and cellos over there. And so, but on guitar, you can't really do that. You can hit a couple of low notes and then go do some high note stuff. Again, I'm talking about typical rock-based guitar playing. Of course, when you get into classical guitar, you start to reach out into more similar kind of crossover moments of writing with piano. But anyway, so do you guys find the same thing? I just had this discussion with a pianist friend of mine a couple of days ago. That's why I brought it up. I thought it was fitting.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before. I'm endlessly jealous of people who can play the piano really well for music production, because it's so useful. We talked about this before. One area where I'm able to sort of throw caution to the wind and rely pretty much totally on inspiration is when I'm doing drums. Drums, being a bassist, seeing how the drums fit in with the bass parts is very, I guess, easier for me than doing everything else, just because I'm so used to listening to drums so much from playing in bands. But Vince, being a keyboardist yourself, what's your view there?
I was actually thinking, sometimes being a pianist can be a little bit debilitating because, not everything that I write is going to be for piano. Actually, the vast majority of stuff that I do, either the piano is not there or it's not the major instrument. And it can sound really bad when you're doing guitar and it sounds pianistic, or you're doing strings and it sounds pianistic, and you just know when a person who is not a string writer, who is a pianist through and through, is writing strings, and you hear the motion. It's like, wow, it's just so thick, it's so muddy, there's no clarity. Sometimes being a pianist isn't all it's cut out to be, and often I actually try to break away from it. Yes, my fingers want to do something. I'm really inspired to write this piece, and I actually have to slow myself down for a moment and think about what would a violinist really enjoy playing here for this thing. If I have a sound in my mind, don't immediately try to create that sound in the way that I know best with my hands on a keyboard. But okay, let me think about this. Let me write it down. Let me think about the harmonic progression, the voicing, where's the play going to happen between instruments, and that often gets me writing things better, actually. If I am writing something that's primarily for piano, it's great. Hey, I'm just going to play this thing. It's going to be awesome. But the other 90% of the time, where it's for strings or winds or synth work, and I want to actually do things with fun arpeggiations and is I want to try to step back and do it the right way as opposed to relying on the piano skill to potentially make it sounding like a pianist just sort of phoned it in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Oh boy, and
actually, that's part of the reason why I can't. Oh, sorry.
No.
I'm going to go ahead. That's part of the reason why I've been trying my best to do some different things. Like last year, I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn how to play the Iwi and try to be a better wind player so that I know more about how to play wind parts and record wind parts and have an idea about what sounds like it would be very fun for a wind instrumentalist to actually play. And I actually put out a question a few weeks ago about music scoring because for all the note writing that I do to myself when I'm making very rare that I actually write scores for orchestra. But now I'm messing around with that and realizing, when I have this different method of doing things, sometimes you don't necessarily need to do things the absolute fastest way. Inspiration is great. It the right way. Yeah.
We probably better save Vince. His feed is starting to go. Poor Vince. But I did see that what you posted, Vince, and I'm curious if you went with Notion or if you went with like Sibelius or what did you end up going with? Because Vince had posted on Twitter, I think it was, what score writing software do people recommend? Do you use anything like that, Alex?
No.
Do they have anything like that in the tracker world? Is that like one of the windows? Can you write score?
No. No.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, the closest you'll get is to, you'd probably have to export your tracker listings as a MIDI file and then bring that into like Logic or something like that. No, that's Tracker was originally designed as a nice, like, easy way for people to create music on computers without needing score or score abilities. That's why it's kind of so. Once you understand what's happening, it's very, very intuitive. So it's very, very far away from traditional notation, I'm afraid.
So I wonder how many people in game audio right now, talking composers obviously, their primary instrument is a keyboard-based instrument or a string-based instrument. If you guys hit us up on Twitter at Game Audio Hour and let us know what your answer is, what your instrument is, because I've always thought that most composers are on a piano, but in the chat room alone we got some guitarists.
Yeah, once we have two Vinces now. Look at that.
We have Vince stereo.
We have bit crushed stereo Vince. Yeah, actually, once to try and kind of bring the physical instrument that I play, which is bass, closer to the process, I bought a Yamaha 5-string bass, and then I restrung it as EADGC with one. So it's like a 6-string without the low B. I think we talked about this before, didn't we?
I don't know. We talk about a lot of stuff, but keep going because that's just good. That means that we're covering most of the main topics.
Yeah. So that actually helped a lot, being able to work out different kinds of harmonies entirely on the bass with because of course with a high C you can do stuff much higher up, and that actually helped a lot. But the only thing is that like physically, you sit down in front of a computer and you have a controller keyboard in front of you. If you're working with a 5-string or a 6-string bass, it's a big instrument. You've got to kind of hold, and then you'll be inputting stuff on the keyboard into your song, and then you go back to play it again. And it's big and heavy on your legs, so it was not really very practical.
It is very uncomfortable. I like to sketch. So back to the inspiration or theory. Typically, when I'm writing something, I will sit on the guitar because it's my confident instrument and sketch out the progression. I play any kind. If I'm going to orchestrate it, I play any kind of cello or violin lines on the guitar first. But I know a smidgen about how to play a violin, so I try to use some of that knowledge on the guitar neck, even though I know it's not tuned the same. And I try to write those lines that way. And then I try to fill out the middle on a piano with like pads and things like that, or on a keyboard. But one thing that's very helpful to me in that equation of things is that I have a Roland GK2 pickup on one of my guitars, and I have a Yamaha G50, which is a guitar MIDI converter. And I can plug that into it's plugged into my computer, or I can run it through some of my synthesizers out here and use the guitar to better simulate orchestral instruments that I'm trying to play.
How is that? Is the response pretty good? Like, is it actually like functional, or is it more of a novelty? Is it actually usable?
It's functional. I bought it, when they both were brand new, and at this time the technology is aged, and there's better technology out there. But at the time when I bought it, that was the best you could get. Was a Roland Hex pickup and the G50 from Yamaha. What I like about the G50 from Yamaha, if I could explain for a minute, is that depending upon where your hand is strumming the guitar or picking a string, you can divide MIDI there. So you can make violins if you're up here close to the neck, and cellos if you're back here. And also you can assign an instrument to each of the 6 strings. So you can have all kinds of crazy combinations you can go between, which makes it really cool for writing multiple orchestral parts. But the pickup doesn't track as good as it used to. It feels like it's gotten old. I know it's a technology, but I don't remember it being as bad as it was the other day when I pulled it out. And since then, there's a company called Axiom, I think, AXIOM, who has come up with one. It's been out a while, I think, anyway. Look up guitar MIDI converter. I messed with one of these at a guitar shop. So hopefully that answers your question. It can be really great if you use this other product, but my old gear still works for me well enough.
It would be really cool if with that, can you say that the picking position is directly correlated to, say, like a modulation value or something? Because that would be really cool for playing synth parts.
Ooh, that would be cool. I've never tried to do that. I can't imagine it can't be. If you look up the Yamaha G50, and I bet you can get those on eBay super cheap now. If you get the Yamaha G50 and just look at the manual, you will be blown away by the functionality that's within that thing. And people aren't, at least the people who introduced me to it, weren't using half of that. I got in and started digging around and discovered all these things it could do.
Matt just said no one's mentioning synths and programming as one of their instruments. Well, that is kind of me, really. But
yeah, that's for sure.
That's my wheelhouse. But I don't know that programming. Well, what do you think, Vince? Like programming a synthesizer, it's not really the same kind of thing as playing an instrument?
I don't know. I think there is something to that. I mean, I have a certain amount of virtuosity with things like pure data and stuff like that, and that's pretty cool. I mean, I know one of the reasons why I stick with Cakewalk is because I still use Cakewalk macros with CalScript, and I have a certain virtuosity with using that for generating MIDI data. No, I think there's something to that. Whatever you have your virtuosity in, and that's a valid instrument.
Because I mean, part of, like, when I said before that 95% of my process is music theory by necessity, just because of the background that I have, that it's music theory for me also includes the science of sound design with a synthesizer. So I would class that within. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I mean, of course, I'm sure iCompose, when he was asking about music theory, I'm sure originally. Sorry, I don't actually know if iCompose is a man or a woman, but I'll have to. I guess I'll assume he. Sorry, iCompose, if you're a woman. She was probably originally considering music theory as being, harmony theory and traditional music theory in that sense. But for me, inspiration, the other side of inspiration is the sort of more structured, logical side of music production, which is where, for example, with sound design, all of sound design is basically more of a scientific process with an artistic goal. For me, which is what I mean by 95% music theory and 5% inspiration. It's difficult to sort of lash out and be spontaneous and twist knobs and see what happens Most synthesizers don't really. Some of them do, but not too many of them actually facilitate that style of patch creation. I would call that the Street Fighter style. Vince, I think you know what I mean. It's like mashing the buttons and just
downright, yeah.
You know, whereas if you're into the more sort of Tekken or Virtua Fighter or I don't know Soul Calibur, sort of more technical approach. That's what I would call music theory.
Yeah, I think it's important to I always try to categorize things. So you've got an instrument which you write the progression on, right? And you've got other instruments that you're writing lead lines on. And then you have to have instruments that create crazy pad sounds or synth leads or stuff like that. It's kind of like three different divisions of sound when it comes to composing something, especially in the world of like the hybrid orchestral techno kind of sound that's so popular today. So it's very important. I consider it, and not only are you playing an instrument, you're endlessly creating new instruments that just happen to have the same kind of form. Just like if you're playing a guitar or a bass or a mandolin or a violin, there's subtle differences, but the form's the same. And so by being a synth creator, a sound sculptor, you're just using a keyboard as your input, but other than that, you're creating all these crazy different instruments. I think it's important. Because in the end, you got to put that layer that kind of ties it all together underneath it.
Right. I just wish it was like more ergonomically comfortable to use a string instrument as the chief, input, regardless of the technology. Like if we imagine this amazing technology that I'm sure there is now, but there's amazing technology that takes string vibrations and converts them into MIDI data with unparalleled accuracy and fidelity.
Axon is the name of that company that I was trying to think of. Axon.
Unless you're using
Axon, AXON, right?
Yeah, AXON. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, unless you use like a standing desk, or it's just sort of so ergonomically uncomfortable to use a stringed instrument for note entry. Here's trouble.
It is. I agree, because I will be sitting at a keyboard and I have the guitar on my lap, and it drives me nuts, and I just think to myself, my God, I can't wait till I get this guitar out of here.
So speaking of getting the guitar out of there, we're graced by the glorious, legendary, the man himself.
The Matt Piersall, who apparently has some sort of app in his Google that is driving my Google crazy.
Oh, really?
Are you guys getting all these pop-ups?
No.
It said I could get some free deals if I clicked on this thing.
You have infected my Googs.
I'm sorry, man. I don't like to infect people's Googs.
No worries. What's up, buddy? Did you get the little one to sleep?
I did, yeah. She's staying with me this week, and I had to chill for a second so she actually falls asleep. And she's pretty good about going to bed. I gave her an Ambien. So
amazing. Lollipop style Ambien.
No, I just hey, you want an Ambien? And she was like, yeah, I guess.
How old is she, Matt?
She's 18 months.
18 months, oh yeah.
She's advanced. No, I'm kidding. She's a regular 18-month-old. She's she's starting to talk, so it's really cool, actually. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Cool.
That's wonderful. Well, we were talking about inspiration versus theory when you're writing something, Matt.
Okay. Where did you guys land on that?
We all are in different places depending upon. Let's see here if I can recap. Mine's easy. It's the instrument I'm writing on. It makes a difference for me. Alex, he is 95% theory, but he's more maybe 75% theory, 25% sound design.
Yeah.
And Vince is kind of an even 50-50 of both. He thinks a lot obviously about what is needed for the composition and sees where that leads him.
Right.
Would you say that's right, Vince?
Yeah, that's about right.
I would say that when I do music, I'm I was into a lot of guitar bands when I was younger, and part of those bands was the sound was more important, almost as important as what you played. And so I'm like a sound first guy. I would say I'm probably 90% inspiration and like what little I know about actual composition. I work that in when I'm kind of stuck. But it's mainly like I would say it's mainly just I'm inspired to do something, or I have some sort of reference track, or I've been trying to infuse a lot of my own sort of sound into what I do for games recently, instead of just trying to like match something else. So I've been listening to a ton of dance music. So I kind of write very electronic things, and if they don't want that, if the client doesn't want that, I usually send them to somebody else because I'm not that good at mimicking styles, really.
You know what? That brings up a really great point, something I was thinking about talking about for a subject, so we'll kind of hedge into it a little bit. I was listening to a soundtrack today, and if the conversation goes well and I don't get all negative, I'll say what it was.
Okay.
If I get all grumpy, I'm not saying what the soundtrack was. I was listening to a soundtrack today, and the compositions in the soundtrack were very similar to things that I write when I'm comfortably just kind of screwing around, right? I'm just messing around, and I'm pumping something out. And I'm going, dude, this guy got hired to do that for a game, and I always get turned down to do that when I submit that stuff.
Right.
How the hell did he do that? The bastard. And now, albeit the guy is hugely popular,
That's
and
why.
I do not compete on that level whatsoever. And I imagine a lot of it has to do with his name and his familiarity. But it really kind of got under my skin a little bit. Not his talent, but how the industry is almost in some ways locked into a sound. Unless you're famous, then they'll let you do your thing. And I go, oh, come on, man.
I'd be curious to hear this composer's early material.
Yeah.
Like, what did he do to get to that point?
He was in a rock band
Mm.
and then started to do some soundtracks.
Gotcha.
And now has come over to the game industry.
Full time?
I don't think so. I've got his last two projects, and one was a movie and one was a game. And he's just amazingly. I'm really addicted to his stuff. But I'm addicted to his stuff because I'm seeing a guy write stuff that I'm comfortable writing, and if he can do it, maybe I can do it too. That's my attitude about it.
Yeah,
but it's
go ahead, Alex.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's so tough though. I mean, when it comes to career and people's success and things like that, it's never good to. If you see people doing things that you can do, however, and with just as much skill and ability as you can, however, for some reason they're extremely famous and nobody knows about you. There's no real benefit in sort of working yourself up into an emotional kind of knot, thinking about, oh my God, I'm so jealous, I could do that so much better, or why didn't they choose me? Because, everybody walks a different pathway, and I'm sure that that person has stresses and that person has, issues and stuff that wouldn't even enter your mind. So,
what got me thinking about it, Will, is the positive attitude that came out of it for me was, here's a guy who's just doing what he does. So I should just do what I do rather than keep trying to sound like something that I don't do very well. And that's where I was relating it to what Matt was saying, is Matt saying, I'm now writing what I write. And if you want me to sound like John Williams, I'm not your guy, Yeah. And this guy is, that's the thought that popped into my mind when I was listening to the soundtrack. I was like, I just got to stay dedicated to what it is that I do well. And hopefully it'll come around. I work. I'm happy with the work I get, but, we could all use more work, and hopefully it'll come around eventually.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I also used to be concerned about the fact that, I can really only do synth music. My main thing is programming synthesizers and making 100% synthesized music, and I don't even use samples. And so I was kind of worried, will I ever be able, is anybody going to appreciate what I do, because it's kind of unusual, and I'm not very versatile. And if you ask me to, make some kind of orchestral score for you, I could probably give it a try, but there's no way that it would be as good as somebody like Mike Shapiro or any of Vince or any of you guys. And so, after a while, it's just like, well, let's. At the end of the day, a client like a game designer has a choice of people that they can look at. well, we're going to have a look. We have a list of people that we want for maybe a rough idea of the sound that we have in mind for our game. And if you're able to be really, really good at just doing the Kyle Johnson or just the Matt Piersall or the Diamante tone, then that's exactly what you should do.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, good advice. That's kind of where I came to with this, because in my advanced age, I think I got to give up trying to sound alike, just like Matt was saying.
For me, I remember, I guess when I started, I wanted to do composition originally over sound design. I ended up moving into sound design because someone gave me some really good advice really early in my career, like 2002. But 2002 to 2007, I had various opportunities to get music work for games, and I would listen to what I thought the client would want, and I would make demo pieces, and I was really trying to be everything but what I wanted to actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And we accidentally got a music gig, more or less accidentally. I didn't realize they had wanted us to do music for Mushroom Men. That was the first time I had done music for a game. And it took 5 years before I ever did that. I was surprised that they had wanted us to do the music, and they had just assumed that we would do it rather than actually asking us to. So I just approached it in this weird way, and I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I haven't had an opportunity to do what I wanted to do ever. So it probably will never happen again. So rather than like study up and do what I think they want, I'm just going to do exactly what I want. Hopefully they'll go for it. And if I never get hired to do music again, it'll be okay. And it ended up being really cool, and people liked it. And so that's kind of still how I approach it.
Yeah. Hey, Vince, there's a question in the chat room I want to pose to you. If a famous person makes a sound popular, does it make it easier for you to pitch that? Do you get a lot of pitches from people that say, hey, so-and-so did this on this soundtrack, and it was a really huge success, and I write stuff like that too?
Yeah, I actually just did a response right when you did that. But yeah, I mean, I think a famous person, that's useful. But not necessarily a famous person. There's just so much music out there. Having more than a few examples of what is going on that you want to do, or a possible idea, or an approach, or a concept. Here is a version of this type of, I don't know, trying to think of something. Whatever. Style A, this guy does style A, this guy does style A, this guy does a different type of style, which is sort of related to style A, and just showing all of those examples. I find that a lot of developers and potential clients, they don't mind knowing that there are actually a lot of different possibilities that exist within what you're trying to show them. Often if you talk to them, you send them an email, you're like, oh, well, what about this? And you describe it, and you even send a demo track, and they're like, well, is that real? Even with that demo track, even with that concept pitch, is that really a possibility? But just showing them a few more examples of that helps greatly, I think.
That's a good point. Although they don't want their game to sound just like anybody else. I mean, that's probably the first thing that I hear from clients is, we like this style, but we don't want ours to sound anything like anybody else who's done that.
Actually,
right. That's true, but that's why it's good. It's not necessarily the best thing that it's a really famous person doing that. It's John Williams, but no, actually it's this guy, these other guys, and I think we can agree that these are actually cool sounds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Matt?
I was gonna ask, how often do you guys have game music as your reference point versus anything else, like a band or a composer or an album that somebody loves? That's a great question.
That's a fantastic question.
Go, Alex.
For me, never game music. Like hardly ever. hardly ever game music. For no real particular reason. It's just, I mean, of course, I listen to a lot of game music, of course, and I love game music, obviously, but game music in the total spectrum of music, game music forms like this much.
Yeah.
So why would you limit yourself to, referencing this much when you have all of this breadth of reference material that you can go to? So just completely like throwing a dart at a dartboard, completely by by the probability of actually nailing something in the game music. Yeah, I want that. For me personally, yeah, hardly ever game music. How about you, Matt?
Well, I would say maybe like I have had game music references, but like 5% of the time, something really small. And I've also found an interesting correlation with people that ask to sound like another game, or they reference a game's music, and the quality of their product. If they reference another game, they're typically like, that's their art intake, or other video games. So I find that those people don't get outside and like live the sort of inspired life, And I don't know if that makes much sense, but they are limited individuals, I think, and so working for them is more difficult than working for someone that says, references, something really interesting, or some band, or Ennio Morricone, or any of those, like some really cool, like really well-respected composer or band. I get a lot of, we like a lot of like indie rock, or not indie rock, but like indie dance music. People say, I really like this. Like, it'd be kind of cool if it was in the game and maybe more gamified. But yeah, I rarely get a request that's sound like Zelda, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I might have misunderstood your question. You're meaning when clients say, we want this kind of style asking me, or when I'm giving reference to clients?
I'm saying when a client asks you and they say, hey, Alex, we want you to do some game music, and we want it to sound like Legend of Zelda or something like that. Yeah, when they ask.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood your question. I thought you meant when I'm giving people musical reference from my direction. Yeah, I've been very fortunate that the people that I've worked with have been very very open-minded. I think they know because I'm not the most versatile game composer in the universe, and so they know that, well, there's not really much point in asking Alex to do this massive, John Williams kind of score. So I think Vince is just running to the toilet.
You just ticked him off.
I'm not gonna. That's ridiculous. I'm out of here.
This man doesn't know what he's talking about. He threw his headphones off. You see that?
That's right. This is ridiculous. I'm out of here. Anyway,
his headphones got caught on something. They came flying off his head. For the people who came.
Do you think he had to? Because he did run real fast.
Yeah, it was probably a number one.
Okay.
No, I'm not guessing. You guys stop it. I think he had some kind of work thing come up because he's at work. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think because that's one advantage to here he's back.
He's back. He's poor Vince. We're like the comedian that makes fun of the person when they have to leave for the bathroom.
Are you relieved there, Vince? You relieved now?
I had to take a phone call really quickly. Sorry.
No problem, man. No problem at all. Anytime.
We thought you just got pissed off with what I said. It's like, this is ridiculous. I'm not taking part in this anymore.
Yeah, come on. You have a problem with game music? Come on.
Yeah, no. Anyway, what I was saying was one advantage to being more of a specialist than somebody who's super versatile is people don't generally come to you with, we want you to sound like this because they know that you sound a certain way. And so, for me personally, I've been fortunate that the projects that I've worked on, most people have just said, just do your thing and hopefully it'll be good.
We should have Chris Rickwood on the show sometime.
Oh, I'd love to get Chris on here.
Because Chris is like he's the composer that would have a lot of stories about what we're talking about right now. He's a super versatile composer.
Yeah, he is. What a talented guy. I didn't think to get him on here. Don't tell him. Don't tell him I didn't think to ask him.
Yeah, he would be great. He's fun.
Oh, wait. Now the world knows I didn't tell him. I didn't ask him. I'll ask him. I'll get on there. I'm writing a note right now because that's a great idea. I'll tell you, I agree though. I don't listen to much game music myself. Although I did just order the LP version of what's it called, Sword and Sorcery.
Oh, cool. Jim Guthrie stuff?
Jim Guthrie, man. I love that soundtrack.
Yeah.
That's such a great soundtrack. And they have it on LP, so I had to do that.
I actually have it as well. Check this out.
Uh-oh.
This is a double 7-inch.
Oh, I can't see it yet.
Yeah. It said, "Now we are cosmic friends forever, okay?"
Oh, is that your video feed is kind of blurry and your mic went out. What is it, Matt?
Oh, this is it's a double 7-inch record from Sorcery.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Did you know that was it this year? LP Records saw the hugest spike in sales ever, which is fantastic. I think in this age of disposable music files, people are wanting to go all the way back to the full physical experience, the smell and the size and you don't just double click on a file. You actually got to take the needle and put it there in the groove, and that whole experience is brilliant.
You are talking my language, and probably many other people's as well. I just bought a dual turntable 2 months ago. It's so good. You got to get a good turntable, a good sound system.
I'm gonna do that. I went to like a brunch thing at this girl's house yesterday, and we just sat around with a group of people listening to records and talking, and it was just so nice.
Isn't that nice? And when you get a record, you get all the information. If it's a gatefold, you get this picture in the middle.
Love it. Yeah, I'm excited.
Hey Vince, I know you're being politely quiet because of your feed, but what are your opinions on how much game music you listen to as opposed to non-game music to influence you for a project?
Oh man, well when I listen to maybe a few specific things when I think about musical inspiration for a project, but very often I'm looking at everything else that's going on. So things like looking at the different tuning of, say, the movement of an avatar. Okay, what is the sound design that goes with that? What is the music that goes with that? And then a week later, actually, we decided that the speed for this avatar is going to be within these numbers. And that might change things. Does it change the sound design? Does it change the music that goes along with the level that he's running in? I would say very often it does bear some thought. Maybe I should actually change the tempo of this music. Maybe there's a different feel now, and I can help exacerbate that particular feeling or emotion with the music that goes along with that. I actually think I go about 50-50 because I really do like game music quite a bit, especially game music that does the interactive stuff really well. And it's kind of funny. I'll listen to things like Vagrant Story, which is it's an old Square soundtrack, one of those old Square, not Square Enix, but back when they were just SquareSoft. And that's, of course, just the album MP3 on my computer. But listening to that, it is like a symbol. It points me to the interactive music experience that I had way back when with it. And it's like, wow, it's cool thinking back to that interactive music experience, even though it doesn't quite give me that with the album experience.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I'm about 50-50. Sometimes I'll listen to some, what did I last listen to? Oh, I guess I last listened to some silly J-pop, and then I listened to some Michael Nyman, and then I listened to... Actually, I've been listening to a lot of minimalists lately. So yeah, John Adams, Michael Nyman, those guys.
What there's iCompose has just said in jest in the chat room that he says we should put together a quiz so that he can prove that he's better than Alex and Kyle at game music knowledge.
I haven't read the. I need to read the chat. I'm not keeping up.
Which iCompose, I can tell you that would not be difficult to be better than me at game music knowledge, because my game music knowledge kind of ends at the Commodore Amiga. It picks up a little bit later on down the line, but you can ask me soundtracks on the Amiga. But yeah, What do you think about the knowledge of, obviously, getting ideas for how to implement game audio in an interesting way? Yes, of course. When we're talking implementation, absolutely. However, as far as knowing what other people have done in the past, like especially Vince will have tested this. There's a massive, there's a huge body of lore. That's LORE lore, not LAW lore. There's a huge body of lore about Japanese game music, of course. And for those who haven't seen it, go to the Red Bull Academy site and have a look at the what was it called? There's a six-part series.
Beneath the Carts.
Yeah, that's right. There's a six-part series about Japanese game music, which is really fascinating. And I watched that, and I live in Japan. I've been here for, 15 years or so, and I speak fluent Japanese. And I'm watching them. This is really interesting. I've got to remember the names of some of these people so I can talk to Vince about them. But then I've already forgotten who they are, and I might remember some of the songs, but I've already forgotten. It's like, oh, I can't remember the name of the guy who did this music and that. And how important is it to know, to be very, very knowledgeable in our forefathers and foremothers in the game audio industry?
I would say it's no more and no less you have to actually use the techniques that are used for writing Beethoven symphonies and Mozart concerti. Maybe, perhaps, in some strange way, sure. But I would say that the possibility of doing that is not that dissimilar from the possibility of doing something that sounds exactly like Streets of Rage in this modern era of video game development, where there are so many things that are not just looking forward but also looking back. Because with the struggles of video game developers trying to figure out what to do to make coin, am I going to establish a new audience or am I going to tap into an existing audience?
Right.
Yeah, it's a very complex thing, but I would say that it was somewhere more useful than not useful.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
I have a question. How many of us four here and all the wonderful people in the chat room at the moment, we have quite a
I know, it's awesome.
Collection of people in the how many people, everybody in the chat room, answer this as well. How many people started game audio and game music because they loved game music? So how about you guys, Matt, Kyle, Vince, how many of you guys started in game music because you loved game music?
I started with game audio because my first video game experiences were with a Commodore 64, only connected to one of those 1084 monitors and no speakers. So I imagined all the sound in my head. I was thinking constantly about what games should sound like before I realized a few years later, oh, there is sound to this. Hey, I bet I could do this. Yeah.
We had a 1084S, the 1084, which had speakers in it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
How about Matt, Kyle? Did you start in writing game music because you loved game music and that was your chief source of inspiration?
No, not at all. I kind of wish I could say yes because I think that's the right answer. But the truth is that I was doing. I had gotten out of video games for a long time, even playing them, and I did nothing but make electronic music. But on hardware, from the mid 90s to basically when I started doing video games, and I sort of lucked into it a little bit. I started working on Dragon Ball Z, and I worked on anime, and then from there I found the games industry, and then it was kind of a business decision and a creative decision. I saw how narrow the world of the American anime import business was. It was a very narrow business, and there were maybe 5 companies at the time that I started, and then I saw how many game companies there were, and for games I could do original material, and I loved making electronic music. I loved music technology. I came to love games after I was making them. And I loved them as a kid. And in fact, as a child, I wanted to write music for video games. But I kind of completely forgot about that once girls got into the picture and dry humping became a possibility. So I just got into it basically as like, I want a creative life. That's why I got into game music and sound design, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, can you follow up with? Can you follow that?
No, nothing follows dry humping. I think we've talked about it before, actually. I was working on a movie soundtrack, and a friend of mine got me into a video game, and I ran out and I bought an Xbox. Yeah, I didn't come into game audio until then. And I would get bored writing for this movie. I wasn't doing very well. The movie actually never got released. In the end, I was happy with the soundtrack, but I really struggled, mostly creatively. And I was getting all my inspiration from this video game I was playing with some friends. And as I went back and forth, I was like, maybe I'm in the wrong business. Maybe I need to be over here. What was bothering me about the soundtrack was that it's, like all soundtracks, are very linear. This piece, I need you to write 30 seconds of something that's going to make people cry. Okay, now I need a minute of this other thing that's got a guy running through the forest. And it seems somewhat boring. And I would have all these thoughts about, well, maybe I could do this and I could do that, and I would try some new motif and I'd send it, and they'd go, no, we don't want that. It would always be very tight, and that's when I realized that even though I was familiar, I've been a video gamer my whole life, and I've known about game music my whole life and game audio, but I never had an interest in it at all. I was always working on movie soundtracks or trying to be a rock star. Those were my two things that I was going to do, and neither one of them happened. But anyway, so with the games, I could take that, right? I could take 10 motifs and submit it for one scene. And we could probably use them somewhere, So I was writing all this music for this movie, and I was using 10% of it, but yet all of it could be used over here in this video game. All these options could happen. And so that was really when I converted over. But in addition to that, the Fat Man is totally to credit, and I got to give Jeremy Soule some shout-out as well, somebody said in the chat room, because Neverwinter Nights, I was like, holy cow, man. I mean, there's some games like Civilization and Neverwinter Nights which I played for like a decade. You know what I mean? Other games I can't say I've ever played that long.
Oh, sorry, I said Jesper Kid. He was actually someone that did game music that I was crazy influenced by.
Oh, that's a good one too. But the Fat Man, I remember, of course, I'm playing in rock bands. I'm living in Los Angeles. I'm sleeping on floors. And I'm trying to find time to play The Seventh Guest. And it had a CD. And I could take the soundtrack. It was the first game I ever owned where the soundtrack was a separate CD. And I put it in my car, and I could drive places and listen to this awesome soundtrack while I was going to go play some weird music at midnight in a bar where people beat people with leather and stripped them to X's.
Not in L.A.
That's a true story. I had to play some pretty divey places.
I think I prefer Matt's story about dry humping to that, actually.
Kyle wins. Kyle, this week you're the legendary Kyle Johnson.
No, that's too bad. You guys need to get out more if that shocks you.
No, not really. I mean,
anyway, so that's my story. So did it come from? I did not start wanting to be in game audio. It wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't until The Seventh Guest came out that I realized some cool music was happening, and it wasn't until later when the Xbox happened that I realized that I'd rather be writing over there than writing over here.
Hey, something's on my mind actually. And when Vince was talking about the player speed changing the spirit of the music, it got me thinking about something that I'd love to explore in a future conversation, potentially. I want to talk about what we currently have available technologically, and maybe people that have done it, but composing in engine. Mm-hmm. Like while the game is running, or not the game is running necessarily, but just like the iteration time being brought down to something that's so minimal, where you can change tempo, you can change instrumentation, like without having to render out a new file. Mm. And I know Wise supports MIDI now, and I'm curious to see how quickly we'll be able to iterate. I'm using it for a couple of projects, and I'm very curious to see if it's going to be good enough to iterate really, really speedily in the engine. I'm excited about that. I'd love to be able to compose in engine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got a tool that we're building here. It's still being built. Prototype's done, but we're still moving on. That kind of does that. You write scripts. There's a generative engine attached to the game audio engine. Or, sorry, there's a generative engine in the game audio engine. You attach it to your game. It watches your triggers.
Yeah.
Scripts are based off of locations, and they tell the generative engine what samples to go get from the sample library and how to play them, and then composes in real time while you're playing the game. That's what we're building. And but how that relates to what you're saying is you can write these scripts and change them while you're testing the game, and
That's awesome.
And have the sound do different stuff. I'll show you the demo, man. I got video demos and stuff, and I can give you a hands-on as well.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Well, someday we'll get it done.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, we've been at it for 3 years, or 2 years, 2.5 years probably. But
well, it's been a great show.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Man, talking about making music in engine though, maybe we should talk a little bit more about that. I've been playing around with all of these engines lately. Since I've been dealing with lots of student projects these days, people are asking me questions about things like Fmod and Fabric and Wise, and I can't say that I'm a master at all of them. Well, I mean, I guess I can say that I'm pretty much a veteran with Fmod, but I'm definitely not a master at Wise or Fabric. But it's really cool seeing all the stuff that you can do with Wise and MIDI and Fabric is making things a lot easier these days for both sound and music, and in all of these projects, not just the AAA games. Everything can do really cool things with sound and music now.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe that's a good topic for a future show.
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, Alex, next week, can we have half of the oranges eaten?
We'll work on it, actually. You've noticed that we've recharged.
Yeah, completely.
As my wife was placing them out, she's putting them down saying, this is going to make that Kyle guy very happy. That's the first thing that Kyle saw when we started the show today.
Yeah, I noticed it too. I also noticed you have a kid picture behind you. I'm really digging it.
Yeah, there's two there, and there's like a little calendar that tells him what day it is, which is stuck on Sunday because he kind of got bored of that. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-month-year-old.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, I guess we better sign off.
Yeah,
thanks, Caddies, for joining us. Thanks, panelists, for being here as always. I love seeing you guys and doing the show. Hopefully, it's been helpful because we went all over the place, but this was a really strong episode. I think we covered a lot of cool things. And also, like always, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, tell people how awesome we are, send me presents.
Thanks to everybody in the chat room as well. It was nice to see some new faces here. Gabe Castro, and sounds like Jord. Some new faces in the chat room, which is great. And of course, the rocks, the regulars, Chase and Matt and I Compose. Great to have Raphael. Raphael's tuning in from Brazil, everybody. So he's like 1 o'clock in the morning for him over there. So that's dedication.
That is dedication.
That is crazy. I like saving my bacon on how to close a show out. Thanks, buddy.
Todo bem? Is that how you say thank you in Portuguese? No, never mind.
Yeah, Raphael will chime in the chat room in a moment about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, what he said. Yeah.
What he said. All right, guys. I'm outie.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Later.